Okay, y'all ready to get going? It's our second show of the day. I think we're going to do something spontaneous later today because we usually do 3 or 4 of these shows a day. But later on today, we'll probably do something. So we've got Patricia Cagganello coming on. She's an author and many other things. I'm going to go ahead and pull her up now. I want to thank everybody for coming in. Thank you for your continued love and support, contributions. And if these shows resonate with you, please share. We're getting suppressed big time on Facebook. Can you hear me? Oh, wait. Hang on.
I can.
Wait. we're muting each other. Okay. How you doing, Patricia?
I'm doing great, Todd. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for coming on and honoring us with your presence and sharing space with us. I know you've got a book you recently co-authored, and we're going to talk about
Hmm.
that in a little bit. I don't know anything about you. I'm sorry I didn't do my homework.
That's okay.
But
That's okay.
it's just yeah, it's just a conversation, two people getting to know each other in front of all of our friends. So yeah, uh, I'm not really sure. Morgan has a way of finding the right people, and especially lately, there's been like a lot of powerful women coming on. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know where you want to start. I mean, this is kind of we talk a lot about awakening and ascension and unveiling and shadow and all the stuff that goes along with this trip. Did you have a wake up experience? How long you been doing
I
what you've been doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had a few, quite a few actually, and the journey for me has been about 8 years now. I had that quintessential 50 something midlife. I think they used to call it midlife crisis. I think everybody's been having spiritual awakenings for as long as they could imagine, and we just framed it as a midlife crisis. But mine happened at 50. I had that traumatic life event that kind of spins you around, turns you upside down, shakes you a little bit, and gets you to start seeking some deeper answers and try to figure it all out. So mine's been about 8 years. Hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Is that when you started writing, or were you already a writer?
No, so it's really interesting. I was not a writer. I had no intention of ever writing books. I was probably on my third lifetime or third career, as people would say. And what happened to me was, it was an unexpected divorce, and that may not seem very traumatic, but we all have, I believe, these wounding patterns or these triggers, and different things trigger us, and the most perfect thing triggers us when we're ready to kind of have us do that deep dive if we choose to. And so mine was my divorce, and I was always a very faith-filled person. I was raised Roman Catholic, and I believed in all of that, but it wasn't enough. When I found myself on my bedroom floor more than I was upright, I said, I need some help. And I started reaching out to the angels. I just said, somebody, something help me. And of course the angels came, but the animals came. The animals came big time. I didn't even know what was happening because I was not spiritually aware at all. And my first book actually was a download that I received. People talk about downloads or awakenings, but it was all about
Mm.
the animals that had been showing themselves to me and visiting me for a period of time.
Let's talk.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that because are you talking about incarnated animals or
Oh,
dimensional?
absolutely. Yeah, no, 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 all real. Most of them in my house, most of them in my
Oh
bedroom.
wow.
Like what the heck
So
is happening here?
wow, I didn't expect that. I thought you were going to say they were in the ethers, like in the third
Yeah,
eye. So
no,
how did that happen? I mean, how did that start? You said you were like so many of us in the fetal position on a
mhm,
regular basis. And so
absolutely.
you reached out,
Hmm.
angels came, and we could talk about
Hmm.
that in a bit. But I've
Hmm.
never heard anyone say that incarnated animals, came
Oh,
forth
wow.
in my awakening. So how did that
Absolutely.
start? What was the first animal, and when was the first, or I don't know, how many animal encounters did you have before you went, wait a minute, there's a pattern to this, right?
There's something happening here. Well, it's interesting because the first one that really showed itself to me was probably about a year before my divorce. You know, things were kind of going downhill, but I was really still kind of clueless. And it actually came in my bedroom. So we lived in a 4-bedroom colonial 2-story house, master bedroom, you know, second floor down the hall, right?
Mm.
You know, we lived in the suburbs with woods around us, but we didn't live in the woods, and animals were never in our house. And the first time it happened, it was about 2 a.m. and we sleep with our door closed, right? About 2
Mm.
a.m, I was woke up because there was this, what I thought was a bird, and it was fluttering right above my face. It was literally touching. I could feel the wings and on my face. And I was like, I startled awake and I was like, what's happening? I jump up and I run out of the bedroom because I'm terrified. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. And my then husband, I'm like, there's a bird in here, there's a bird in here. And I slam the door and he's like, it's not a bird. And it turned out to be a bat, of course. And I had no idea what was happening. I just thought that was the worst possible thing that could ever happen to anybody. I was terrified. And was thinking, should I go get checked for rabies? This is how unconscious I was to the world of
Yeah.
animals or
Yeah.
anything like that. About a year later, it happened again. 2 a.m, in the bedroom, door shut, husband sleeping there, completely clueless, not bothering him at all, right above my face, fluttering right above my face.
It was a
And
bat again.
it was a bat. It was a bat. It was a bat
Yeah.
again. And the bat, the meaning of the bat, I mean, I'm sure everybody who's listening knows, and it's obviously they're the night flyers and they see things in the dark and there's transformation. And, I became very,
Yeah.
very involved in animal symbolism eventually, but the bat came 3 times actually. Until the third time I was by myself, it was post-divorce, and I was woken up again at like 2 a.m. And I knew that at that time that there was no way that I could ever say the bat wasn't there for me. I mean, we didn't live with our doors open,
I don't think so, right?
right?
I don't
And
think so.
I was
Well,
still
wow.
terrified. Yeah. Mhm.
But wow, I mean, this is like, I mean, well, it appears to be physical,
Mhm.
but there's a
Interesting, right?
non-physical, there's a
Mhm.
non-physical element. The only thing I can compare it to, I went to Sedona and I went up to a stupa, and it
Mhm.
was on the base of a mountain, and this Indian guy came down and we had an exchange and some weird stuff happened. And I think he's from wherever the bat's from. I don't think it's actually, I would say like an interdimensional
Right. Well, I
being.
agree, because let me tell you what happened, because I think there's also, let me tell you my frog story, my toad story, because
Yes.
this is exactly, and I had still had no idea, but you're absolutely correct. And now in reflection, they're physical beings, but I don't believe they're really physical. They're actually incarnating, I believe, right there, because there's no way they could get in
Yeah.
my house. So it was post-divorce, and it was like a Saturday morning, and anybody who's been divorced or break up from a relationship, I think they can relate, because I was still kind of sleeping on my side of the bed. So you know exactly where you're sleeping, because contrary to what people might believe, when a partner leaves, you don't just take over the bed. At least I didn't. You kind of stay in your lane for a little while until you get used to it, right? So I knew exactly where I was sleeping. And I remember I woke up one Saturday morning, and this is all again within a few months time of each other, once the third bat came. And I get up, and again, second floor down the hall, and my bed was this slat bed with like a high headboard, right? So we're a couple feet off the ground floor, a high backed
Yeah.
headboard that's all slats, and this skinny little top railing on the top of the headboard. So I get out of bed and I get up, and I'm a super light sleeper, and something catches out of the corner of my eye, and it was directly above my head where I was sleeping. And I was like, I thought it was a rock. And I said, how is there a rock? How did a rock get on top of my head on the headboard directly above where I was? I turned to grab it, half asleep, and it's not a rock. It's a living, breathing toad, frog. It's bigger than my hand. It was like a bullfrog, like a giant thing. And he's just sitting there bolting his eyes at me. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. Of course, I started screaming again, and one of my kids had to come and get it and take it outside.
You still hadn't
Um,
got it after 4 times.
I still hadn't got
Yeah.
it, but I was like in my bedroom directly above my bed. So here's this animal that there's no way it got in the house where anybody's seeing, up a flight of stairs, down the hall, up my bed while I'm sleeping, and is sitting directly above my head when it's craziness. So,
Yeah,
and
no,
many
it's
other
not.
animals.
But yeah, I want to talk about this. Well, because I've had what I would consider very real animal encounters.
Mhm.
Never did I think, to my knowledge, that any of them were interdimensional. Um, but I totally believe it because I've seen some crazy stuff. Like I was telling Morgan last night when I first woke up. I woke up the same time you did, same circumstances, same age. And I was told, go to this park, this sanctuary I used to go to, and there was a pond and there was a sidewalk around it. It was real big. Anyway, I was told go. And I had these spirit guides had come in and they were talking about fear, like
Mhm.
letting go of fear, totally letting go of fear. So I went out there. I'd already had like 2 animal encounters out there. And I come around a corner and there's a snake and he's perched like his, I'd say the middle of his body's on the ground and he's perched
Mhm.
up like to strike. And I'm told you're supposed to walk by it. So I totally believe no, there's and then when there's an incarnated aspect
Mhm.
to it, and I don't feel like mine's been to the degree yours has, but my question is, so like this happened with the 3 times with the bat,
Mhm.
then it happens with the toad, it's going
Mhm.
to happen some more.
Mhm.
Did you at the time or later when you went back to that space hear a message from them or get a message or any direction or anything?
So the messages started coming more when I started opening up and beginning asking, like understanding more about animal symbolism. It's interesting because I used to have cats. I had 4 cats, and when my first cat passed, it was very upsetting and traumatic, and he was sick, and it was really my first time an animal, passed. And I was in despair, and I was led to a book. Somebody took me to a metaphysical store and was like, come with me, you need to get out of the house. And I was just looking for anything I could relate to, and I just saw some books. So I said, well, let me find a book. And I saw this book, and it was called Animals Speak. I had no idea what it was, and I thought, well, it's about animals.
Oh my
Maybe it'll,
God,
yeah,
that book, I'm at a
yeah,
friend's house, right? We've been house sitting.
hmm,
That book, I just saw it last night.
yeah.
It's in the
Well,
shelf.
it's
You got copies.
it's awesome. I had no idea what it was. I just said, oh, animals. Maybe it'll make me feel better. Maybe there's something about cats in it. I had no clue. And so I buy this book, Animal Speak, just to do something. And that was really my beginning of flipping through it and going, well, what's all this stuff about, honestly? So, and then as the animals kept coming, I I would then start referring to the book to say, well, wait a minute, I think there's something
Okay,
here for
so
me.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
and that's what I was thinking too when you
Hmm.
when you were telling the first part of about the bats, because I've had several encounters with bats, and they seem to be very clear. Like whatever was coming in, I was like,
Right,
I know this is real, but never got that close.
right.
But I looked them up. I started doing what you're doing, and I looked them up,
Mhm.
and the bats were a really good sign. Like it was a real
Mhm.
powerful sign. I think what it
I
was,
think when
yeah, it
you're
was a
ready
sign of,
for it, yeah, it is.
yeah, when you're ready
Yeah,
for it, yeah.
it's
Well,
a
not,
great sign.
I mean, for what happened to you laying in
Hmm.
bed, I mean, just imagine if that was an angel or that was an ET, or something else.
Hmm.
But and my wife and I have experienced, visuals, physical apparitions that were translucent but very clearly defined, no different than me looking at you now. But
Hmm.
never anything that was purely physical, at least not to my knowledge, in
Hmm.
my life, any encounters I've had, animals or people, so that's really I've never heard of anyone waking up like that.
It was, yeah, it got to the point that I was like, okay, enough, like not in my bedroom, like love animals, you can visit me, show
Mhm.
yourself to me, but you're not allowed in my bedroom. I'd prefer you not to be in my house. I think we have to draw boundaries, right? And what started happening, Todd, which was really fascinating, and I could always, send you some pictures offline if you'd like. But in the back of my house, there was this giant rock face. And, we lived in the house for 18 years. I never noticed anything, except I noticed that there at the very top, it looked like a giant whale it was the shape of a whale. And it was like a giant whale was just floating at the top of this rock face. But this rock face was
Mhm.
probably 60 feet, 20 feet. as things were happening, more and more and more magic really started showing itself. And I call it magic only because I believe it's magical. I mean, I think it's all normal when you're aware of it. But what started happening in the rock face was, it kind of became almost a running joke. People would come over and say, play like Find the Animal in the Rocks. It was almost as if during the night, more and more animals would carve themselves into the rock, and there's
Yeah.
dolphins, and there's gorillas, and there's snakes, and there's eagles, and there's faces and full animals literally in carved out, literally. It was the craziest thing. You'd wake up and and they're still there. They were still there. I mean, I have pictures of them going, this is incredible.
So, I mean, wow, this is 2012, 13, 14, something like that. And so, and how did that play out for you individually? You know, I mean, you got this, because I kind of ran into it in 2012 or 13, 14, the whole light worker ascension community, or however, whatever you want to put that in, category you want to put that in. But I can, you know, and I know what I was doing and what I was going through, but it was kind of like like a lot of people, personal trauma, and you had some of that as well. There was some divine episodes and apparitions and stuff, but nothing in the physical like that. But how did your psyche, how did your mentality handle you're having this wake up experience with these animals, and you're also seeing this growing collective awareness starting to happen, which is paralleling your experience. I mean, where was your head? Were you even thinking about anything else, or were you pretty much doing this all the time with the animals?
Well, I was, I was working full time. I was raising my kids. I was going through menopause. I was trying to survive it most of the time. But for me, what I do, and what really is kind of a hallmark of my way I handle things, is I study. I learn. I actually enrolled in a interfaith seminary, a 2-year seminary program, and I'm an ordained interfaith minister, because in addition to the spiritual experiences, and I was studying the angels. I was having past life regressions. I was astral traveling. I mean, all that stuff, I'm just like a sponge. I'm like, once I think there's something there, I'm like, I need to understand what's happening. But I was also studying, and I was studying all the world's religions and all the world's cultures, because I'm not only very much a student, but I feel that it's really important to have a really solid framework for what before I can speak about anything or do anything. To me, I can't just have experiences and, talk about them, in the sense of, I just didn't want to be another talking head. So I was studying, and I was learning, and I was experiencing. I was having lots of spiritual experiences.
Did you ever get like wowed? To the point that
daily, yes.
Where you were just like, I know, right? And especially when it first starts out, it happens so often. And finally, I had this, I would just, when it would happen, I'd say, just get over the wow, quicker the better. But you must have just gone like, okay, wait a minute, am I losing my mind? 3 bats, a frog, and what happened with the fox?
Oh, yeah. Well, it was an owl that was the most prominent, the owl, actually. So I'll tell you what happened with the owl, but I'd like to tell, if we wanted to, kind of talk experiences, because what was happening for me is I was being shown what I needed to see. I was being made aware of, we all have triggers, and we have different things. And so not only were the animals showing up really in droves, but again, the angels were showing up. My second book is about the golden angels, because my angels are golden, and I've seen them, and they've been with me, and I've seen myself as, golden beings, and all kinds of really beautiful things. But the point of it, and what was important for me, was, yes, like, get over the wow, because it's not about the wow. I mean, the wow is the cool part. It makes it fun, right? But
that's right.
But that's not the point of this. It's we should enjoy it, of course, but it's, you have to stop chasing the wow, and see what is behind the wow. Right. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I'm in total agreement with you. I am soul. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just such a unique story because I mean, look, a lot of the things are the same. You know, the
Mhm.
main things like the person's aware of some kind of collective expansion, grassroots collective expansion. Two, they're doing shadow work, led in
Mhm.
by trauma, and then
Mhm.
three, they get this other stream coming in, or like in your case, another two or three streams. You got the angels, you got the animals, and it's just very unique because of the animal thing. Is I mean, I won't ask any more like these trivial questions, but
No,
I just got to know.
it's
Is
okay.
do you have, because I never talked to anyone that had this kind of relationship with the animals, you know, where they
Mhm.
actually were that close to 'em. Do you have any kind of, because I'm sure you have transmissions and downloads and
Mhm.
communications and all that, but like that come straight from the animal kingdom,
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
spirit animals
Mhm.
type of thing?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I
Have you
mean, it started, um, so again, I mean, it's, what's the reason, or what's, for me, it's always what's the greater awareness around it. You know what I mean? Yes, and what's really coming very prominent, and actually it's tied into with somebody I work with now. It has to do with the horse consciousness, but it's not, and I want to stop, it's not about the horse consciousness. So recently I've been, had the actual pleasure to travel to a horse sanctuary in the United Kingdom, where the horses are not, they call it equine therapy, but it really isn't. The horses enter an actual altered state, and they're actually communicating energetically and healing and working energetically, much beyond any other thing that I've ever
wow.
seen before. And they were working with me, but they showed themselves to me. And one of
Now who shot the horses did?
the horses did. So they showed themselves in the
Okay.
sense that, so the horse, one of the main horses that I was working with me, she's a beautiful green light. She's a beautiful green angel, actually. And she literally, the angel came out of the horse, and what they were communicating was that they are beings inhabiting the horse bodies. And so there's
Yeah.
horses, there's horse consciousness. And then the bigger part, the important part that I think is for the story, that I would want people to understand, is that there's also beautiful high level beings that are inhabiting many different life forms around here. Some of them are human, some of them are
Hmm.
not. Some are in the stones. I mean, there's many powerful stone beings
Absolutely.
around that have
Absolutely.
showed
Yeah.
themselves. The consciousness that's coming through the animals, some of it is an animal consciousness, some of it is not. Some of them are our brothers and our sisters that are inhabiting different life forms. And I think of it as, kind of the A team, right? So it's not just the disembodied spirits that we can call. There are
Yes.
many beings in physical form that are not human. And so it's not just what a
Whoa.
cool horse, it's what
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
phenomenal soul
Okay.
sister I just reconnected
Yeah.
with.
Yeah, this is very good. So really, you're living in a world where there's more physicality in
Mhm.
what, in the truth frequency or the dimensional, non-dimensional, whatever, the way everyone's doing it. Most everybody's doing it with less physicality. Now you have
Mhm.
coincidences and chance meetings and
Mhm.
synchronicities and all that. So you're actually, and the other thing that to me, as you describe it, it's no different than anything else. It's like what you're
Right.
saying is in a horse could be a soul,
Is a
is a
soul,
soul,
is a
is a
high
soul. But
level, high
yes,
conscious being
yeah,
inhabiting the horse for a purpose, just like we're
yeah,
inhabiting these
yeah,
bodies for a purpose.
yeah, exactly. And then you said also that sometimes it's a brother or sister coming through. Now, do you mean that like from like a channeling, like channeling through the horse or something like that?
No, well, so for this example of this horse, so there was I call him an angel. She's a beautiful green being, a beautiful green light, and she showed herself, and I recognized her. I know that we know each other, right? I know.
Hmm.
So my light and her light connected, and she was actually very excited and grateful that I saw who she was, that I saw beyond, oh, this
Mm.
is a consciousness. This horse has a consciousness. She's a high level being inhabiting a horse body, and there's a big difference. And it doesn't mean that every horse has high level beings inhabiting their body. Not every human has a
Okay.
high level being
So it could be,
inhabiting their body.
yeah. So it could be like a young soul, so to speak, or an older soul or more ascended soul, and just, yeah.
Right. So
That's,
what's
but
happening, but what's happening, this is, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, is just
no, no, go ahead.
the consciousness that is part of what I believe is part of what I'm to share. And maybe this is why, different things happen different ways, because to me, it's as natural as breathing, is the understanding that when we look around and we're doing our work and we have reasons for being here, that we have support and we have our team, in many forms. Some of them are tree beings and some of them are, and when I say tree beings, again, it it doesn't mean that's a tree being. It means that there's a high level soul inhabiting the tree. So why would a high level soul inhabit a tree, or why would a high level soul inhabit a horse body, or why would it inhabit a human body? There's different ways of communication. There's different ways of
Hmm.
working with energy that can be of support. There's things that horses can do in the way they tune in that humans can't, right? There's things
Right.
humans can do that horses can't. And so it's like a beautiful orchestra, right? Or a beautiful play, and everybody's playing their part, but we have to recognize our partners. We have to see who's out there for us to
Hmm.
not only communicate, because they're not in service to us, Todd. We're here together to
Yeah.
do whatever we think we're supposed to be doing here, but we're doing it in concert with the other kingdoms, and
Yeah.
the beings are in the other kingdoms.
Absolutely. Yeah. I never could really stomach that, we have dominion over all animals.
Yeah.
I kind of, once this thing flipped, I thought, well, you know what? I think we're actually the least intelligent or the least awake, the animals and everyone else. But yeah, trees have been big for me. Animals have been
Mhm.
big. Did you have a relationship? Would you say you were like an animal person, animal lover? Because I know some people that are like totally cool with almost any kind of animal
No,
before
I
all
was
this happened.
terrified of bats. No, I was terrified of bats. I think I was just a no. No, I mean I love beings. I love animals, but I wasn't an animal lover.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't live
Wow.
and breathe the animals. No,
Mm,
no, not at all.
mm.
I was the quintessential 50 something soccer mom, working full time, raising my family, doing life.
Oh
I was
God.
about as mainstream as
Oh
you
my
could
God.
get, honestly.
That's that's even more contrast. You had a pretty rude, abrupt 180 like I did.
Yeah.
I want to
Mhm.
talk a little bit about your work, uh, some of the stuff that you published and what you just co-created with someone. Uh,
Mhm.
but I wanted to ask you just a few more things on the experiential, like, so yeah, being a soccer mom, having all that stuff go down, uh, I mean, and now here we are in 2019, it's almost 2020, and everything's pointing to limitlessness. I mean, just it's moving at warp speed, quantum.
Mhm.
It- I know you've observed a lot over the last few years. How, where does your human aspect stand now? Does it does it lead the way? Is it the manager? Does it get triggered? How does it cope? I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, the person.
Mhm. Yeah, so I guess we're coping better than we used to, you know. I think it's a process. I have spent a lot, I've done a lot of work, my inner work, probably more than I'd be, would want people to know, only because I I just innately know when things started happening that there's, a really big reason that we're here, and
Yeah.
I'm not here to um to just work full time, pay taxes and die kind of idea.
Yeah.
And that really kind of just really started showing itself more and more. So what I
Yeah.
think is really cool about the wow factor that we talked about before is because I think it's important when we get the wow factor, it catches our attention. And if we relate to it or observe it or join with it in the way that it isn't about, oh wow, look how cool I am and look at what I can do. And we get these labels and we become these things
Hmm.
and we tell
Yeah.
people these things, like, who really cares, right? Um,
Yeah.
no, honestly,
That's right.
I have a
That's
real
right.
problem with a lot of the inauthenticity that seems to be around.
Yeah.
You
It's
can't
a,
take a
yeah, it's like
workshop
it,
and
yeah.
you're a master.
Yeah.
It's like crazy. No, it's craziness, right?
Oh my God, we're gonna get along just fine. No,
Yeah,
I love your straightforwardness. No, you're right, and it's just people's. We've all been privy to the
it's
shadow. It's all the
yeah.
shadows playing out. But
Well, it
it
is.
is getting louder. It is getting louder in these communities, and at
Well, you
some
know what it
point,
is? It's a story, but it's a story. So my company is called Sacred Stories, right? I'm a storyteller. I should love story, but I love story for what it teaches us, how it brings us together. I love the story for the story. I don't love the story to become the story. I don't love the story
yeah,
for, there's a big difference. And
yeah,
so to go back to your question of who I am today, and that's what I would ask people. So the wow is cool. It's fun. It's really fun when the cool stuff happens. But it's not why we're here. And it's, it's not the purpose of anything. I think what it does is it opens our eyes, if we want, to see things with an expanded awareness, with expanded
yeah,
potential. And when we can see that, then I think we have a responsibility to step up and do more, and to make our lives about more, and and certainly about more than just ourselves and who
yeah.
we try to tell people we
Image,
are.
our image,
Exactly.
our
Yeah.
image, and our the initials after our name. Yeah. So, and like another thing, I just find your whole experience and the whole way you're built is really cool and unique. How about do you have any physical impact over these years when as people talk about energies coming down or geomagnetic storms or this planet's in retrograde and all that stuff? Are you feeling a physical transition as well as or transformation as well as the transformation you're having in your life experience?
I I I certainly feel things in the physical. But for me, it's interesting because, right, so I relate in a very physical way. The earth and the animals and those connections is a
Mm,
very physical way. I like how you kind of were able to frame that. I think that's kind of, was really interesting. Um, Energetically, I mean, to me, it's all light. I just, not to go on I hope I'm answering your question. For me, my connection is through the light. So it's interesting because I have this relationship with the earth,
mm,
and then I don't, right? So I know I'm not from the earth. I know I'm not of the earth. And when people say, well, where are you from? I know I travel the galaxy. I only relate to color frequency, and and I've seen where I come from, or at least where I've recently come from, which is like a golden city. It's the golden layer, and I know I've seen the angels, I've
mm.
seen my collective, I visited multiple times. So I relate to color frequency, and where are you from? I'm from golden light. I don't care about planets. I don't care about physicality. So it's fascinating that I relate in a very physical way, or, in the sense of what you were saying, but I don't connect that
Yeah,
is anything about
yeah,
me, right?
yeah,
So when you say, how do you experience things? I experience through light, and I work through light, and I
yeah.
understand things through light. Does it make sense? Um,
Yeah, yeah, you're navigating. That's how you see it. That's how
right.
you see the landscape. You're navigating it there, functioning here, doing your thing. And I love what you said about the responsibility, stepping up and expanding the whole
Mhm,
experience for yourself and everyone, which again
mhm.
is, like alignment with truth. I want to ask you one other thing before we start talking about what you've been publishing. Just out of curiosity, because it's 1,600 shows, man. Everybody's story is so different. And I'm like you, I'm a sponge. But how about galactic or star family transmissions? I mean, you've got a lot of stuff going on. Are they in the party too? I know some people that they're not,
Right.
but
So it's interesting. I've I've received information. I've seen myself in other parts of the galaxy. I've been a witness and know that I travel the galaxy, and I know that who is here right now embodied is not my full soul, and I know that I'm other places doing work as we speak. I do see that, and I've been I think, again, I see enough to give me enough to know the greater work that has to be done, but not to get caught up in the story of the rest of it, because I've been told very specifically that I need to focus on being here and not traveling the galaxy. I don't identify with, are you from Syria, the Sirius or Pleiades or any of the kind of common things people talk about. I
Yeah.
identify with golden light. That's really the only thing I identify
Yeah.
with. But I do
Yeah.
know that I do know, because I see myself and I've seen myself, that I am a
Yeah.
galactic traveler, without a doubt.
Yeah. And what do you think? I mean, with that type of reflection and memories and experiences, how do you feel about this time and space that we're all in? Do you feel like this is a very, very special place or time or whatever event or whatever, or is it business as usual in the universe?
I think we're all really special, I really do. I think that um I I think that there's a danger in some of the stories that people are telling, and I think there's a danger in some of the expectations that people have, in the sense of, the heavens opening up and all these people coming down and somehow saving us,
Yeah.
and
So in other
whatever.
words, yeah,
It's a
yeah.
great
So I think
movie.
you're, yeah.
Yeah.
So in other words, like the way I look at it,
Hmm.
ascension to me is a potential program. It's a program.
Mm.
I mean, anything's a potential program, but I get what you're saying. It's like it's more of a savior frequency. Yeah, savior frequency. Like this
See,
is going
it's
to
both.
happen. You're protected.
It's both, though. So this is what I think is interesting. It's both. So there's the ascension or the expansion of awareness. It's really just an expansion of awareness. Ascension gives the
Right.
idea that somehow this is linear
Growing
or
up.
a ladder, and we're not. It's the you know in incalculable amounts of frequency can be shifted in the tiniest of shifts, you know what I mean? And so it's
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
it's about the shifting of a frequency into an expansion of an awareness. It's not about ascending or descending or anything like that. That is happening at all times with all beings, and we are very much a part of that. That is happening in parallel to
Yeah.
what's happening in this earth. And I think it is an important time in this earth that I think that people do need to step up and take a lot more responsibility, because, and many other people have said, and it's true, I do believe it's true, that we're the ones we've been waiting for. But
Absolutely.
I don't believe, Todd, honestly, that at least in my lifetime, or this incarnation of this lifetime, or in this dimension, or whatever, however far out we want to take it, that we're gonna, be ascending to the fifth dimension or something like that. I think that's a great story, but I don't think we're
Hmm.
there yet.
Hmm. Wow, you're interesting to talk to. I enjoy this. Now you've published 2 or 3 books. I know you just put out
Or
one and co-authored it, 4 books. Sorry.
yeah,
Uh, so
yeah,
can
said
you, and you
that.
mentioned the first 2. Yeah, you
Mm-hmm,
mentioned the first. Yeah, we'll get into that.
mm-hmm.
But you mentioned the first 2 real quick. The first one was, what was that, in regard to animals? Was that
Yes. So the first
okay?
2 books were just kind of the downloads. It's the first one is God is in the Little Things, Messages from the Animals. And then
All
the
right.
second one is God is in the Little Things, Messages from the Golden Angels. And that's just a continuation. It's really just the
Right.
beginning of my journey.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Did the I'm just curious before we talk about this next book. Did have the animals, the energy of the animals, the consciousness of the animals, have they spoken in terms of what we're doing here on Earth in this incarnation collectively?
Just the most recent information from the animals was really similarly to what I was explaining with the horses, is that the animals
Yeah.
want us to understand that there's players among the animal kingdom. It doesn't mean all animals are players, just like all humans are players, but not to look at the animals in any way as in service to us, or even us, put them on a pedestal higher than us.
Right.
They're beings inhabiting physical form, and our support or our team members we can find in other physical forms in addition to human. But it's important to
Mm,
understand that it's not every animal, and it's important for us to develop and tune in our connection to the beings that are inhabiting different forms.
yeah. And you said something real quick. I don't want to let that one slide. You said not all the animals are and not all the
Mhm.
humans are.
Right.
What did you mean by that? With the humans not being like
I think
not being legit, not or not
it's
being not
just the consciousness that we're holding, right? Something that
okay.
I think is important is, right, that we need to be conscious
Okay.
of the consciousness we're holding. Not all humans are holding a consciousness that is to
Yeah.
be of service. And many
Yeah.
humans are absolutely unconscious, and many other forms of life are not holding a high consciousness. And
Okay.
it's just
No, okay. Wow, this is so interesting. We're gonna have to get together again if you want to. I want to talk more about that.
yeah,
Let's talk
absolutely.
about, and I'll just mention too, I know you publish, I know I think you
Hmm.
published my friend Miguel Dean's book.
Miguel's
And
one of our authors.
yeah, just wanted to mention that. Hello, Miguel. He's been on here probably 10 times. He doesn't like me. We always say we have a good time. But this book, what's the name of the book? What's it about? And
Mhm.
who's your friend that co-authored it with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, there's the book is called Chaos to Clarity and Sacred Stories of Transformational Change. And my co-author is Kathleen O'Keefe Canavas. And Dr. Bernie Siegel, who's a multi-New York Times bestselling author, has written the foreword to it, along with
Wow.
30 contributing authors from around the world, and
Wow.
sharing their stories. And yes, I'm a book publisher. Part of what my journey has taken me is for me to understand, or me to know that part of my responsibility, and choose to accept it, is to help share information, wisdom, and help others have a voice to do that as well. And so one of those manifestations of that has been a book publishing company. And
Yeah.
and the reason that I wanted to do this book, and it's just come together so incredibly beautifully, is because, to go back to the stories, right? Our stories are important, and our stories connect us, and our stories teach us, and they inspire us,
Yeah.
and
That's
there's
right.
really good stuff in our stories. Um, as long as we keep them as stories and we don't become
Yeah.
our
We're not
stories.
attached.
We're
Yeah.
not
We're
attached
not
to
our
our
stories.
stories.
Yeah.
We don't
We
define our
tell this. Yeah.
labels. Exactly.
You know, that's interesting because I say all the time on these shows, we have all kinds of, beautiful souls coming on here doing all kinds of stuff, and it's all very real, very legit. Because it's very much an authentic, vulnerable environment where you're supported. So and then of course the objective or the vision has always been exactly what you're saying with your publishing company, providing a place to bring all this together. And of course we're in the business of transmitting or trying to expand the awareness for people that come on. But yeah, and so you had 30 different people telling their stories. And are
Yeah.
these like typically stories of transformation?
So what we asked for was significant change events in your life. The hero
Hmm.
or heroine's journey. So tell us the change, tell us the journey, and then tell us how you came out of it, or the positive perspective. And we say that, this book is really filled with the heart of our shared humanity, because these stories are stories of abusive relationship. They're the chaos, right? The abusive
Yeah.
relationship, the addiction, the loss of a child, the loss of a parent, the loss of love, the gaining of love later in life. There are human stories. There are humanity. And I think that is so important, that as spiritually conscious people, we don't lose sight of our humanity. We can't float in the
That's right.
freaking clouds all day long, and that's not why we're
I
here.
love you.
Well,
Right.
we're embodied, right? We're embodied spirits, so let's
Yes,
enjoy the human experience. And so how
exactly.
do we connect through our experiences? One of the things that I write about in the book, and because I talk about the spirituality of change. My co-author talks about the psychology of change among all the, the stories. But one of the things that I talk about is is in the experience is the emotion, and is in the emotion is the gift. So I don't believe we're here to learn lessons. I'm a former teacher, and I don't like lessons. Anything that puts us behind the eight ball or diminishes truly the magnificence of who we are, I think is an old paradigm. It's an old punitive patriarchal bunch of crap. So I believe it's the experience, right? So there's major movements in small shifts, and it's the expansion of the awareness. But what catches our attention is the emotion that we feel, and we feel emotion, deep emotion, from events, human events in our lives. And for many of us, it sounds like the two of us, that happened through a traumatic event. Some people could happen through joy.
Yeah.
But the point is
Well,
that in the emotion, we have an opportunity
yes,
to expand, to change.
absolutely. Yeah. 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 I think that's part of the opportunity we have in this experience is,
Mhm,
um, we have the energy of emotion.
mhm,
And so, until we started to really figure out what was happening, those emotions kind of ran us. But that energy is actually a very powerful alchemic energy. And, I've
mhm,
told the story a few times, before Morgan and I consistently cohabitated this year. Until then, it was, like a hobo living out of a suitcase, doing my work, getting my downloads, and then I'd end up in the middle of nowhere with nowhere to sleep and no money or whatever, right? And I would get really angry, not like crazy angry, but I'd be like fed up, frustrated, beam me up, get me out of here. I'm tired of this shit. And I would go have a come to Jesus meeting with the universe. And what I realized was it always worked, but I knew that I was off balance.
mhm,
So when I started to hear people talking about what you're talking about and reading some things and experiencing some things, it starts to level off. But you're right. It's a very, and I think unique probably in say in a incarnation to have emotion. Because I know a lot of people have talked about downloads and communications they've had and my own downloads where the emotion is like the human gift.
mhm.
To them, they
Yep.
look at it and go, wow, you can transmute this heavy, encounter, whatever, into this incredible light. Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, fascinating discussion. And
Mm.
so, when did you release this book? Is it just coming out now?
Yesterday was
Oh, okay.
launch. And speaking about chaos, and how do we navigate stuff, the launch through part of Amazon is one of the major book sellers, has been chaos on Amazon. So how have we handled that, and moving into clarity? So yes, it came out yesterday, and it's really a work of my heart, in the sense of, because I think, Todd, the other part to the emotion, the other part to the human experience, and why I think this book is important, and I'm just so excited, what I mean, to that it came into manifestation, is because when we get blindsided by emotion, we get blindsided by trauma, if we don't, I thought I was alone. We can get stopped in our tracks. It can actually impede us and impede our ability to be of service, or to do really, what we came here to do. But when we can come together as our shared humanity, and we can find ourselves in other people's stories, and we can see that we're not alone, and we can draw inspiration or courage from other people, which you do on your shows all the time. People go, oh my gosh, I can relate to that. And we can pick up a book and we can read the stories of our fellow uh, humans. We know that we can get through it, and it can lift us to a place that we can expand even further, and we can be of greater service. So it's important that people connect in this way. I
Yeah,
believe.
absolutely, it is. Yeah, I mean, it's the new whatever you want to call it. You can call it 5D or atypical or whatever, abnormal, revolutionary, whatever. And in regard to that, you were a teacher.
Mhm,
I was a corporate guy.
mhm,
Um, there was structure in your in your industry, there was structure in mind, planning, strategizing, all that stuff, calendars and dates and assignments and lessons. And,
I was
uh,
corporate. I
as
was
you,
corporate for years
yeah.
as well.
So,
I
you
was
know,
corporate and I was
so you,
military. I was military.
oh, that's right. You were,
I
oh, so this
was,
is even, this is going to even be a better question.
mhm,
So what I wanted to know was, since this all started happening,
mhm,
and you know, you get everything coming in, they're like, okay, what am I going to do with this? Like, how am I going to do this and support myself, that kind of thing, because a lot of people have run into that.
yeah,
um
absolutely.
did you find that trying to frame it up and control it and strategize, well, I'm not going to use that word, but like the old method of business, let's just put it that way, didn't work, and there was
Mm,
some type of more of a free flowing, spontaneous flow kind of thing that was a whole new math. I mean, I'm saying this because of what, you know, I've been through with Soulogy for the last, you know, 8 years. And, you know, I don't know. I'm just curious because you've got that entrepreneur spirit. You can see it.
yeah. Yeah, well, I took the proverbial leap, right, from a lucrative career and just took the proverbial leap, left my job and said, I'm going to write this spiritual book and in a month I'll be on Oprah and, I'm going to change the world, right? I mean, I did what I think everybody thought they were going to do,
Uh,
and then a year later, I'm like, what the heck happened? And, what was I thinking? And, it is important. I know it's important to be financially successful because the reason it's important for me to be financially successful is because I understand with more resources, I can do more good, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's just not about me. I mean, I'm building an
Mhm.
empire. I'm telling you, we are building and in the highest of consciousness because there's so much work to do. So for me, it is, but that doesn't mean that I haven't said, what the hell am I going to do and how am I going to support myself the rest of my life? But it's interesting
Mhm.
because even in the book, what I talk about is our perception of change and how we ask the questions. So I have a whole
Yeah.
chapter in the book. It's titled "What's the Plan, Stan?" And because my dad used to say that all the time, "What's the plan, Stan?" And it's just
Yeah.
a fun way of asking. So I think what I'd like people to maybe hold, and if this answers, I hope this answers your question, but um, we're still within this three-dimensional construct and I'm still a mom, I still have college to pay for and real world
Yeah.
things to navigate, but when I could look at things from a perception of a little bit more lighthearted and how I framed the question and I didn't wrap it all in this, what am I going to do and how am I going to support myself for the rest of my life, because that'll bring anybody to their knees, right? And I can ask it or look at it knowing
Yeah.
full well that I'm
Yeah.
supported. And I think that's where the wow moments, just to tie it back to the wow moments,
Yeah.
I think that when we have the wow moments, we know that we honestly, we are supported, that there is a bigger plan in place, and
Absolutely.
that we're really important and we're special because we are, we get the wow moments that
Yeah.
remind us of that.
Yeah. Well, you get the wow moments, and you don't get wowed too because you expect them. And you're right. That's a really, yeah, I used to hear that all the time too. I'm 57. You know, what's the plan, Stan? But that's
Right.
really where that's really what I was asking you
Right.
basically. Yeah. So it is a different, it's a different type of journey or a different pattern or something. But because there's an element, you know, in the old business world, it was, you know, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, and, you know,
Mm,
dog eat dog and all that. But there's a greater sense of reciprocation. It's more magical and it's becoming more
mm,
instantaneous based on what we're putting out. And I love what you
yes.
said about building an empire in the basically in the ethers. I mean, building energetically,
Mhm.
the power of the imagination and alignment and communion, what that does to the experience in terms of what materializes is mind blowing. And I think it's moving very rapidly. We'd love to collaborate with you again.
Thank
And
you.
I think we could collaborate in more ways than one. But I have a lot of respect for what you're doing. I know what it takes. And And also it's fascinating, not only about the animals, but, you know, having the kids and going through all the stuff, you know, and everybody, like you said, it's got their story and they're all very relevant and valid. But thank you for sharing space with us today,
Thank you.
and honoring us with your presence. And can you tell us whatever you want to tell us about the book, where to find it though? And yeah,
Yeah, if I
so
could
people,
hold it up, I'm so
Mhm.
I'm so proud of this book because of the people that came together, because of our shared humanity. So it's called Chaos to Clarity: Sacred Stories of Transformational Change. And yes, I mean, you can get it on Amazon with a little bit of work. Booksellers worldwide, and sacredstoriespublishing.com, you know, come there. Actually, we have over $500 of free and discounted gifts through the end of the week with the purchase of the book. It's all on the site. People can find out
Wow.
as
Well, that
a
would probably be
thank
the
you.
would that would be the best way to support you and your
Mhm.
team would be to go straight to your site and purchase, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so
I'm
sacredstoriespublishing.com. Yeah, just you can purchase it anywhere you want, honestly, and just send us the directions are there. Send us the information. And we'd be happy to send you the links to all the launch gifts. But we just want people to read the book, and it's pretty
beautiful.
powerful. Yeah. And Todd, you know, if you message me your address offline, we'll send you and Morgan out a copy as well.
It's a license plate. No, I thank you for that, and I'll do that. We're going to be going to Arkansas, and we're building our empire.
Nice,
We're finally
nice.
getting there after 8 years. But yeah, he's got an address there. We'll be there for a few weeks. It was a pleasure meeting you. I look forward to future collaborations. It would be an honor, of any and all sorts. We're always open. So best of luck to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank
Peace
you,
out,
Todd.
everybody.
Thanks,
See
Todd.
you
It's been great.
again. All right. Bye bye.